All right, so you're getting ready for a Polygraph Examiner interview. That's got to be exciting. We've got all your RoleCatcher resources here, career guides, interview guides, everything. So think of this deep dive as your, crash course to interview success.
Yeah, it's amazing what RoleCatcher can pull together these days.
Really is.
Yeah.
We'll cover what Polygraph Examiners actually do on the day-to-day, the skills that you'll want to be showcasing. And we're going to tackle some of the interview questions that always seem to come up. Plus, we're going to use RoleCatcher's AI to give you some extra tips and tricks along the way. Ready to dive in?
Absolutely.
Let's decode this role, Polygraph Examiner. What do they actually do? It's not just about the lie detector test, right?
No, not at all. It's a really fascinating blend of psychology and technology and investigation. You're preparing individuals for these exams, conducting the tests, analyzing the results. You know those squiggly lines that everybody always wants to know about? And then you might even be presenting your findings in court.
So you're not just like a technician. You're an investigator and a communicator. Kind of like a mind reader in a way.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. And the RoleCatcher Career Guide actually emphasizes that no 2 days are ever the same. I mean, where else can you say that you contribute to solving crimes, you ensure security, you might even play a role in civil matters?
Now, that is a job with some serious impact. Speaking of impact, what skills do we need to really show off to land this job?
Well, remember all those core abilities that we see in the career guide. So reading comprehension, critical thinking, active listening, those aren't just buzzwords. They're super important in this line of work. Being able to analyze both what someone is saying and how they're saying it. Super important.
It's like being a detective of words and body language all at the same time.
Exactly. And don't forget about the more specialized knowledge. So things like legal procedures, understanding how the polygraph technology works, and of course the deception detection techniques.
So how would you suggest showcasing those skills during the interview?
Well, think about your experiences. So that could be past jobs, school volunteer work. And how do those demonstrate the skills? Specific examples are key. If you can tell a story that really shows your critical thinking skills in action, that's going to help you stand out.
Okay, story time. So let's move on to those interview questions. The RoleCatcher Interview Guide has a ton of them.
It does, and we're going to break down some of the most common ones. We'll give you some insights into what the interviewers are really looking for and how to craft a winning answer.
All right, let's start with a classic. Can you explain the polygraph examination process and how it works? Seems pretty straightforward, but I bet there's a lot to unpack there.
You're absolutely right. The interviewer's not just looking for you to recite a textbook definition. They want to see if you can explain this complex process clearly, concisely, highlight the purpose of each stage, and show that you really understand the underlying principles.
So it's not just what happens, but why it's happening.
Exactly. Think of it like you're teaching somebody who's never even seen a polygraph before.
Okay, so I'm the student. Walk me through it. What are the key points?
So you're going to start with the pre-test interview. That's where you're building that rapport with the examinee. You explain how the process works, address any concerns they may have. So it's all about setting the stage.
So creating that comfortable and controlled environment.
Exactly. Then you would explain how the polygraph instrument works, how it measures those physiological responses, breathing, heart rate, sweat gland activity. You don't have to get super technical here, but showing that you understand the connection between those responses and potential deception, that's important.
And then come the questions, right? Those really carefully worded questions designed to elicit those specific responses.
Absolutely. And this is your chance to really show off what you know about the different question techniques. So you've got your control question, you've got your relevant questions, and how those are used to establish that baseline and identify potential deception.
It's almost like setting a trap for those little white lies.
Well, not quite a trap, but you're definitely looking for those inconsistencies in those responses. That might indicate deception. And then finally, don't forget about the post-test interview. So that's where you're analyzing the data, discussing your findings with the examinee. And you might even provide your professional opinion.
And this is where those critical thinking skills really come into play, right?
Absolutely. You have to be able to look at those responses, connect them back to the questions, interpret the data objectively, and then form a conclusion.
So it's not just the squiggly lines, it's the whole picture.
Exactly. And just a quick tip from RoleCatcher's AI. When you're answering a question like this, really consider the specific job that you're applying for. So if it's a law enforcement position, you might want to emphasize your knowledge of legal procedures or interrogation techniques. But if it's more of a research-oriented role, you might focus more on data analysis and scientific methodology.
Tailoring your answer to your audience.
It can make a big difference. Now, are you ready for some follow-up questions? Because interviewers love to dig a little deeper.
Oh, bring it on. The more prepared we are, the better.
That's the spirit. Well, they might ask about specific techniques like the control question test or the guilty knowledge test.
Okay, hold on. What are those exactly?
Sure. So the control question test compares responses to relevant questions about the issue at hand with responses to control questions, which are designed to provoke anxiety in pretty much anyone. The guilty knowledge test assesses whether or not someone has specific knowledge about a crime or an event that only the guilty person would know.
So different approaches, but both aimed at uncovering the truth.
Exactly. And you want to be prepared to explain these techniques simply. Highlight the strengths and limitations of each. This is really where your knowledge is going to shine through. Let's move on to another common question you might get. What kind of qualifications do you have to become a polygraph examiner? This one is all about you showcasing your unique blend of skills and experience.
Okay, so it's not just about listing off degrees and certifications.
Right, those are important, but you need to connect those to the specific requirements of this role. Think back to the skills we talked about: critical thinking, communication, knowledge of legal procedures.
So how do I actually weave those into my answer?
Well, you want to highlight relevant coursework internships or training programs that demonstrate your understanding of psychology, criminal justice, or even physiology. Did you take a course on nonverbal communication? Mention it. Did you intern at a law firm? Talk about how that experience exposed you to legal procedures.
So it's all about painting that picture.
Exactly. Now here's where RoleCatcher's AI can give you an edge. It can analyze your CV and the specific job description and identify any potential skills gaps. It's like having a career coach highlight areas that you might need to strengthen.
That's super useful, so I can make sure my qualifications really match up with what the employer is looking for.
You got it.
Okay, back to those questions. Let's tackle this one. Can you describe a situation where you encountered a difficult examinee during a polygraph examination? This one seems a little bit tricky.
It can be. Everyone loves a good story. But you want to choose an example that highlights your problem-solving skills and your composure without violating confidentiality or speaking negatively about someone you worked with in the past.
So how do I walk that tightrope?
Focus on the specific challenge you faced, what actions you took to address it, and the positive outcome that you achieved. So, for example, you could talk about an examinee who was particularly nervous or uncooperative.
Yeah, I can imagine that happening. What would I do?
Explain how you adapted your communication style, addressed their concerns, and ultimately conducted a successful examination. You want to show that you can handle pressure. You stay professional, even in those tough situations.
It's like being a calming presence in the eye of the storm.
Exactly. And remember, it's okay to acknowledge that these situations can be stressful. It shows self-awareness, a willingness to learn from those challenges.
Makes sense. Okay, what's next on our list?
Let's dive into this question. How do you ensure the accuracy and reliability of your polygraph examinations? This is your chance to demonstrate your commitment to best practices and your understanding of the factors that can influence those results.
So I want to show that I'm not just pushing buttons. I'm a meticulous professional who takes pride in my work.
That's the idea. First, you want to emphasize the importance of proper pre-test procedures, reviewing case information, establishing rapport, clearly explaining the test process. These steps set the foundation.
So it's all about preparation and setting the right tone.
Right. Then talk about your adherence to standardized testing protocols, using validated question techniques, ensuring that your instrument is properly calibrated. Those are all essential.
It's like following a scientific method.
Exactly. And don't forget to mention the importance of ongoing training and continuing education. It shows you're committed to staying up to date.
So highlighting that dedication to professional development. Got it. What about some potential follow-up questions on this topic?
Well, the interviewer might ask about specific types of countermeasures that examinees might use to try to beat the test.
Like holding their breath or biting their tongue?
Exactly. Or they might ask about the limitations of polygraph testing in general. Be prepared to discuss those aspects as well. It shows you have a really nuanced understanding.
So honesty and knowledge are key. What else do we have?
This next question is really interesting. What is your approach when an examinee is suspected of deception? This one delves into your analytical skills and your ethical approach to the role.
It's like walking a tightrope. You need to be thorough, but impartial.
Exactly. It's about finding that balance. Start by emphasizing the importance of remaining objective. Throughout the entire process, you don't approach an examination with a presumption of guilt or innocence.
Right. You're not judge and jury. You're a neutral observer.
Exactly. You're looking for those physiological responses that are consistent with deception, but you're always considering alternative explanations.
So like a detective piecing together the puzzle, but not jumping to conclusions.
Exactly. You could mention specific techniques you use to analyze data, like comparing responses to relevant and control questions, looking for patterns of physiological change. But ultimately, you're providing information to investigators or other decision makers. You're not the one making the final judgment.
Makes sense. Now, how can RoleCatcher's AI help me with this type of question?
Well, it can analyze the specific job description and suggest ways to tailor your answer. For example, if you're applying for a role in law enforcement, it might suggest you highlight your understanding of legal procedures or evidence collection.
So it's like having a personalized guide.
Exactly. Okay, ready for another question? This one gets at the evolving nature of this field.
Bring it on.
Okay, so let's talk tech.
Yeah.
Because this next question focuses on something that's becoming more and more important. What is your experience with computerized polygraph systems?
Interesting. Because the career guide did mention how technology is really changing things for examiners these days.
It really is. Computerized systems are everywhere now. Increased accuracy, automated data analysis. You can store and retrieve information electronically, even if you haven't used them a ton. Being able to talk about how they work and the advantages shows you're thinking ahead.
Right, so it's about being tech savvy and ready to learn new things. But what if I have used them?
Definitely highlight that. Talk about specific programs you know, maybe even how you've used them to be more efficient or accurate.
Show off those tech skills.
Cat.
Okay, what's next?
How do you handle situations where the examinee has a medical condition that could affect the exam? This one's all about judgment. How you balance a good test with the person's well-being.
That's a tough one. Got to be sensitive, but still get reliable results.
Exactly. First things first, you emphasize getting a full medical history if they say something that could throw things off, like a heart condition. Then you talk to a doctor.
Right.
Or another healthcare professional.
Oh, I'm not diagnosing.
Yeah.
But I'm aware of how their health could affect the exam.
Right. You might change how you do the test, maybe even reschedule. It depends on the situation and what's best for everyone.
Okay, that makes sense. What else?
This one's a classic. How do you stay up to date on the latest techniques and practices in polygraph examination? It's your chance to show you're always learning and really dedicated to this.
So more than just saying I read stuff.
Yeah, definitely. Mention professional organizations you're a member of, like the APA or the NPA. Talk about conferences or workshops you've been to, even online courses.
And what about new research?
For sure. Name specific journals or publications you follow, shows you're on top of the latest science. It all paints a picture of someone who really cares about this work.
Okay, continuous learning is key. What's next?
How do you ensure confidentiality and privacy of the examinee's information? Might seem straightforward, but it shows you get how sensitive this is and that you're ethical.
More than just saying I'm good at keeping secrets.
Way more. Reassure them you understand this responsibility. Outline the protocols you follow. Secure data storage, passwords, limited access, all of that.
And what if you have to share info, like with law enforcement?
Great point. Explain you only share what's absolutely necessary, following all the rules, getting permission. You never talk about cases or the person outside of work, ever.
It's about trust and respecting their privacy. Okay, we've done a lot of questions. Is there anything else?
One last big one. Can you describe a time when you had to make a difficult decision based on the results? This one's not just about skills, it's about your judgment, your ethics, and the responsibility that comes with this job.
This feels like one of those how do you think under pressure questions.
Exactly. Focus on the process, not a specific case. You could say the results were unclear, or maybe they didn't match other evidence. Walk them through what you did. Check the data, look for other explanations, talk to colleagues, and how you made your decision.
Showing I'm analytical.
Yeah.
Ethical, and can make tough calls.
Right. And remember, RoleCatcher's AI can tailor your answers. Applying to a law enforcement agency, it might say to talk about chain of custody or working with legal teams.
Like having a coach in my corner. Wow, we covered 10 tough questions. I
Right.
feel like I learned a lot about what it takes to be a polygraph examiner. But let's zoom out. What's next for someone who gets the job? What do the career guides say about career paths?
The great thing is it's not a dead end. You could specialize in criminal investigations, maybe focus on forensic psychology, even become a manager. The career guide breaks it all down, how things change over time.
So you're not just stuck in an interrogation room forever.
Not at all. And those certifications we talked about, the APA and NPA, they can really help you get ahead.
So to our listener getting ready for that interview, You're not just prepping for a job, you're stepping into a really interesting field.
That's right. And with good preparation and a little help from RoleCatcher, you can ace that interview and start this exciting journey.
Any last words of advice?
Just remember, this field is always changing. Technology, research, ethics. Embrace the challenge. Stay curious. Keep learning.
Great advice. To our listener, best of luck on your journey into this world of truth and deception. You got this.